Once upon a time, in 1998, I vowed to climb 48 mountains. And what I'd like to do for the next 40 minutes or so is share a little of my journey with you. I'll make some remarks, read 3 short passages from my book, offer some thoughts about mental training, and leave us with time for question and discussion. You game? All right. Now, if you had known me back in 1998, you might have thought this vow was questionable. I had a bum knee. I have scoliosis that is severe enough that one doctor, when I was in my teens, said, "Don't ever pick up anything heavier than a tissue." I was no longer in my 20s or my 30s. I was 48. And my record with sports was not promising. I had tried and loved 3 of them and had to give each of them up when my body failed me, twice ending with surgery. And lastly, though I hate to admit it, I'm afraid of heights. Nonetheless, this is what I decided to climb: Mount Tripyramid in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. All 3 peaks of it. It was going to be a serious challenge for me. It was 2.5 times as long as I'd ever hiked back in the day on much easier trails. It was one of the taller ones in the Whites. It was cold that day in early October when we decided to go for it. And it was going to take pretty much all day. Book time doesn't even include things like lunch or bio breaks or picture taking or view enjoying or pretty much anything. Along with me on this venture, I invited Kate, my next door neighbor, and my best friend. We did pretty much everything together. She was my daughter's Auntie Kate. She was my dog's Auntie Kate. I also invited Sarah, my best friend from college. Now, Sarah and I were the same age, but Kate was 6 years older, so she was 54 when we started. And it's kind of fitting that I introduce you early on to a couple of friends, because among the themes in my book, friendship is certainly one. Now, one thing that I did not appreciate before I went on the Mount Tripyramid hike was its elevation gain. I was kind of like, meh. Now I've come to think of it like this. Picture for yourselves a 2-story house with an attic, all right? Put another one just like it next door, pick up the second one, put it on top of the first one, and keep going. You need to add up 100 houses to reach 3,000 feet of elevation gain, and we'd be doing that on rocky, rooty, ankle-busting, knee-turning trails. And I'm here to tell you, it was hard. We were on the Scour Ridge Trail, the 3 of us, climbing up on our hands and knees over boulders. I did not expect that at all. And I was starting to get really worried. I was getting anxious that I wouldn't be able to make it to the top, and I wouldn't be able to finish this event that was so important to me. I'd like to read you a couple of paragraphs so that you get a glimpse of why finishing was so important. After months of preparing for this hike, I still didn't know if I was strong enough, tough enough, brave enough. As it had during the night, worry eroded my confidence. Would I finish? Other possible problems, storms, rutting moose, bears, I didn't have the experience to be troubled by. It was me that worried me. We continued leveraging and hoisting, maintaining the lineup that would continue for much of the day. Sarah in the lead, me in the middle, and Kate, slowly and with no apparent angst about it, bringing up the rear. Kate's face was sweaty, but determined. I thought, she really is stronger than I am. Not as fast, but stronger. At some core level, she seemed unfazed by this trail. Sarah was fast and Kate was sure, but what was I? I no longer defined myself as a partner in a national organization or president of my own consulting firm, and I could hardly call myself a writer. I needed to be a hiker, a good one. But I relied on a blend of fear and willpower with neither Sarah's agility nor Kate's character. So now you understand that I was in the middle of a late mid-career change from the world of business to following my bliss, something I'd always wanted to do since childhood, to write a novel. And it was not going well. So there I am on the trail, anxious, worried, concerned I was never going to finish, when something happened. Kate, who was behind me, called up and motioned me to come over to see something, which I did. And when I went back down, this is what I found. Kate unzipped the small pouch belted at her navel and pulled out a camera. Moving to her side, I leaned down to where she crouched on the trail. She pointed out a whole row of icicles hanging from a boulder to our right. They glistened, wetly silver against a backdrop of emerald moss. "Wow," I whispered as Kate moved in for a close-up. I pulled off a glove and reached out to slide my finger down one of the 6-inch sparkling daggers. Cold, slick, solid. I yearned to break one off and lick it, but they were too beautiful to ruin. I remembered my mother coming into my childhood room in the early morning dark to murmur, "It's a snow day." The exhilaration, the sense of freedom, a day in the white glare of snow, making lopsided snowballs and forts, plucking icicles from tree branches until I grew chilled, then the warmth inside the house that fogged my glasses. My mother pressing her warm cheek to my cold one, saying this was her favorite moment of winter. Offering her a bit of icicle that still clung to my mitten. The taste, gritty, with bits of bark and the strange bloody tang of dirt. Perhaps Kate was remembering too. Aren't they amazing? I looked at her and she looked at me, and it settled into my brain that we were here on the spine of one enormous mountain, just as we'd planned, just as we'd trained for. And it was cold and cloudy, but we were warm and we were climbing, and we'd probably hiked 5 miles already, as long as I'd ever hiked in my life. We grinned, big wolf grins, at each other. So the hike didn't get any easier, but I'd had a glimpse of the wonder of the natural world, and I have to say it gave me a whole lot more enthusiasm for this hike. Then things got tougher. You see on the left here, yes, left, Sarah on the Scour Ridge Trail. So I did mean boulders that we had to hike up. And then the other photograph takes place 7 miles later and 3 peaks later at the start of the South Slide, which basically drops off the edge of the photograph, off the edge of the mountain, like a plumb line for about 1,000 feet, a plumb line filled with scree. How was I coping with my fear of heights? You'll just have to read the book to find out. Well, we did finish. Only took us 10 hours, and it took a week for my leg muscles to unclench. But it didn't matter at all because I was elated. I couldn't believe that I'd actually done it. Sarah disappeared back into her busy life, but Kate felt the rapture. And on our early morning training walks, we felt so proud of ourselves, so strong. We strutted through the neighborhood, wanting to pick up cars and save babies. Now, something else happened on that mountain. We met a guy who told us about the 4,000 footers and that we were standing on one. He said we too could join the 4,000 footer club only after we had hiked all 48 of them. And when we did, what did we get? You're looking at it. We got this patch. Well, I thought this was a ridiculous, possibly demented idea. Who would do such a crazy thing? But it stuck with me, and over the course of the next days and weeks, I thought, well, I bet the folks who join that 4,000 footer club are goal-oriented people. Well, shoot, I'm a goal-oriented person. I can do this thing. The next year, I went out and bagged 3 more peaks, 2 with Kate, and 1 a surprise venture on my own with nobody but my little Bichon Frise, Juniper, who, despite her appearance, was an awesome hiking dog. So Kate and I felt pretty pleased with ourselves until one evening I was in the kitchen preparing dinner, and my daughter Casey, who was 9, was doing homework at the kitchen table, and she said, "Mom, I did the math. It's going to take you 21 and a half years to finish the 48, and you'll be 70 and a half years old, and Auntie Kate will be 76 and a half." Kate and I had not done the math. This was clearly not right. We couldn't allow it to be like this, so we took the intensive 8-week-long winter hiking course that the AMC puts on so that we could now hike all year long. We were ready to rock and root, my friends. Fate, however, had other ideas. In the very early days of the optimistic new millennium, Kate underwent surgery and they found ovarian cancer. 3 months later, I was diagnosed with invasive breast cancer. We both went into treatment. Like Kate, I had surgeries, rounds of chemotherapy, and then I began a 5-year course of tamoxifen, and everything gave me lasting side effects. I still have side effects today, as a matter of fact. And then, as you learn in the prologue of my book, in the spring of 2002, ovarian cancer killed my best friend. I was bereft. I had no idea how to fill the void this woman left in my life. I wasn't much up for continuing my quest, but before she died, Kate made me promise that I would continue. She said, "It will keep you strong the way you've kept me." She also persuaded me that I needed to get another hiking buddy, and I didn't want to, but I did, because I had more reasons now to hike than ever before. The mountains were a place where I could go to heal from the trauma of my own breast cancer. And in the wild, it was spacious enough to absorb some of the grief I felt over losing Kate. I had made her another promise, that I would take some of her ashes to the top of a 4,000 footer. I chose Mount Monroe because it was in the presidentials, which are the highest of the 4,000 footers and the grandest and the most difficult. I wasn't strong enough yet to do Mount Washington, which you see in the background of this picture with its towers and observatory. And Mount Monroe, next door to it, this fellow standing on the trail leading up to the summit of Mount Monroe. So the summit kind of protrudes out towards us from this picture. but it was plenty high enough to push me to and past my limits. Sarah came with me. I was not strong enough emotionally or physically to go on my own. And together we set Kate free in the raw, wild winds above Oaks Gulf. To continue my quest, I next chose Mount Musalaki. And I picked it because it was one of the easier ones. At least it was easier than what I had been doing. It was 7.5 miles long, round trip, with 2,450 feet of elevation gain, or think 81 houses. Substantial, but still easier. It was a pivotal climb for me because I went with someone new, Ginny. Ginny and I had known each other from our kids' school for years, and we were friends. And now we were even training buddies, but we had never hiked together. She'd never been to the Whites. She'd certainly never been to a 4,000-footer, and Kate had just died. I thought you might enjoy this image of Mount Musalaki from 1912. As you can see on the summit is a little thing that was known as the Tip Top House, a small hotel. And that carriage road was for horse-drawn buggies to take visitors and guests up to the summit. That's the exact same trail that Ginny and I used to ascend to the summit. And while it's nowhere near as broad and pristine as that now, it's delightful footing. Lots of pine needles and nice soft dirt. It was wonderful. Great way to get up there. And we got along so well. She also loved wildflowers and learning about them. And even though I tried so hard not to, she expected me to compare her to Kate. She even asked me questions about Kate and our hiking experiences, and she held me when I cried. Better yet, she wanted to do another 4,000-footer with me, even though our trail coming down was quite direct from the top, where the Tip Top House is, pretty much straight down, and it was quite stony and difficult on the knees and feet. And it really kicked my energy a bunch, I have to say. Let's take just a quick trip through some 4,000-footers so you get to see some other ones. Many of them start in the woods, like this one. That's me back in the day. And this trail, Falling Waters, goes up to the somewhat famous Franconian Ridge Trail and to Mounts Lincoln and Lafayette. And it has a lovely gradual ascent for the first mile, and then it gets wicked, diabolically steep and hard, hence its nickname, Falling Bodies Trail. The presidentials are the grandest, as I've said, and this is a geological feature that I love. It's called the Great Gulf, and I could just stare at it forever. On the way up to Mount Moriah, that's me again trying out yet another knee brace, there were some interesting moments. Fear of heights? Oh yes, my goodness. Here's a friend, Clara, a wonderful person whom I got to know strictly through hiking, out on the summit of Mount Flume. And lest you think that all of the 4,000-footers are just piles of rock or rubble, here are some that are lushly green. And what I love about Bond and Bond Cliff, and there's another one called West Bond, is that when you're there, you cannot see a single sign of human civilization. It's wonderful. Just this wilderness to absorb and appreciate. The Wildcats are a series of 5 peaks that live across the road from Mount Washington. And here you see first Sarah, followed by Ginny, followed by Rosemary, another friend who hiked with me. Now, as in any endurance sport, the mental game is paramount, right? Even when our bodies can be totally fit and trained and ready, our minds can do us in. And this is true on any marathon endeavor, sports, but other things like a renovation project for your house, or a months-long campaign to get a promotion, or a multi-year design project. Whatever it is, we have to both stay trained on that, what sometimes feels like in the far distance, the goal we want to attain, but also we have to keep moving forward and keep ourselves on track. One of the ways that I found that helped me do this was finding role models. Now, on the trails, I mostly saw men, so I was keen to find a woman role model to teach and inspire me. And the woman that I came up with was a climber called Annie Smith Peck. Has anybody heard of her, Annie Smith Peck? She was amazing. Here's an image of Annie Smith Peck on the cover of a book that was a biography written about her in 2017. And that's what she wore to summit the Matterhorn in 1895. And she scandalized the world, not because she summited as a woman, that had already been done in 1871, but because she wore pants. She was a wonderful role model for me because she didn't even start hiking until her mid-30s, which was considered pretty old. She hiked, she practiced for 10 years before going on to summit the Matterhorn at age 45. And then she became the first person, woman or man, to climb the highest peak in the Americas, Mount Huascarán in Peru, about 22,000 feet high. I tell you, every time I read anything about Annie Smith Peck, I just wanted to run right out and tackle another 4,000 footer. And isn't that what we want our role models to do for us? To inspire us, to encourage us, to keep us going. I also found it important to write down the progress that I was making, because this was a multi-year effort for me. And so each day I write down what I do for physical training, mental training, and what I do professionally, so nowadays working on my book. I find that when I go to review it at the end of a week, I'm always astounded how much I've forgotten that I did earlier on in the week. And it's very helpful to be able to look back and see that, yes, I have achieved things. Yes, I'm making progress. I am moving forward toward that long-term goal. Another way that I did that was with this birthday gift from my husband, Larry, who mounted it on a poster board and hung it on my wall. He strategically placed 48 blue pins on it. And so every time I came back from a climb, I would swap out the blue pin for a red one with a number on it that corresponded to the number of 4,000 footer it was for me. I could see at a glance all that I had accomplished, and I could also see at a glance exactly what I had left to go. And it was very helpful in terms of choosing my next hike. Another mental training tip, celebrate. Here you see Clara and I doing what became a tradition on all my hikes, the peak dance. It was designed to make us look as ridiculous, as goofy as humanly possible. We sang this absurd little ditty that I made up. And why did we do it? Well, every time we did it, we laughed. And as studies have shown, laughter is good medicine. But in addition, when you celebrate, your body releases dopamine, one of the happy chemicals in the body, like serotonin. Dopamine is awesome because not only does it help you set your goals in the first place, but when you achieve them, it gives you this big rush of pleasure. So why not celebrate as often as you can? Now I'd like to talk about something that is incredibly important to me and became so in my book. Finding a home for myself in nature became a chief part of every climb. When I hiked, I made sure, no matter with whom I was, that I had time to hike alone so that I could tune into the natural world around me and make that connection to nature that we were made to do. It was such a gift, no matter how hard the climb had been, and for me they were pretty much all hard. No matter how injured or bruised I was when I got back, I always felt that I had come back brimming with energy. It was as if there was this internal reservoir that had gone dry, and I filled it up on the mountains with exhilarance and exuberance and just a zest for living. As Rachel Carson once wrote, you remember Rachel Carson, the author in 1962 of The Silent Spring. She was one of our early conservationists and environmentalists. She said, "Those who contemplate the beauty of the earth develop reserves of strength that endure as long as life lasts." I'd like to read you a passage from my book that gives you a glimpse of how I felt on the top of my 6th 4,000 footer. The one you see here, the larger one on the left, Mount Osceola. On the right is East Peak, also a 4,000 footer. When I hiked Mount Osceola, it was my first 4,000 footer after cancer. It had been a year since the end of treatment, 2 years since my last climb, and I was still quite weak. But it was a glorious fall day up in Waterville Valley, New Hampshire, where we had an apartment, and I persuaded my family to go with me. The temperature was gorgeous, the sun was shining, and it was just a day to try it. It was 6.4 miles round trip, a little over 2,000 feet, so think 70 houses. I thought, yeah, I bet I can do 70 houses. So as soon as we started off, Casey, now 11 years old, and Juniper just tore off. And once they were out of sight, I begged Larry to slow down. He was already carrying all my gear. I couldn't even manage my water bottle. And then after the first mile, I was stumbling and shambling along. Larry was boosting me up over rocks, and sometimes he went ahead and leaned down and pulled me up a ledge. As we got closer to the top, I was literally grabbing a leg with both hands to pull it forward. But I was so grateful to be back in the mountains again, not just because of my quest and the 4,000 footer club, but because I was back in the wild where I felt I belonged, where I felt like I was one with everything. Casey and Juniper summited first, then Larry hauled me over the top. I stood there breathing and shaking. After I waved them on, they wandered off to explore the broad ledges and take in the view. Once my legs steadied, I crossed the summit to the nearest edge, expecting to see a pretty view of skinny Waterville Valley just from a different orientation. I was wrong, delightfully wrong. Gazing eastward, I marveled at Mount Tri-Pyramid, the brute size of it. Words rolled through my weary brain: majestic, powerful, humbling. I turned slowly to soak up the landscape, allowing myself to believe that though sometimes nearly carried by Larry, I had actually summited Osceola post-cancer. I turned to the northeastern view. Before me spread wave after wave of mountain. I counted no fewer than 7 ranges, each surging behind another. They stretched to the horizon emerald blue, and as they marched farther away, shadowy cerulean shapes that touched the deeper blue of sky. I felt caught up in the motion of those rocky waves. I could take off into those mountains up and down and over until I knew each and every peak. I could let go of my complicated city life and live in the mountains, exploring them all day long and sleeping in them at night. The vast, astonishing beauty caused, along with the joy, an ache. The mountains called for grandeur, and I was only one person, and at that, a lesser version of who I was before. If only I were a more tolerant, better person. I longed for everyone to experience this breaking open of the spirit that was at once nourishing, illuminating, and sweetly painful. Here, a world existed in which all things, small and large, mobile and rooted, oxygen-giving and oxygen-absorbing, had a place in a balanced, sacred whole. I was on such a mountain high, I didn't even know I was high. I felt certain that if everyone could spend time in the mountains, it would change the fabric of our society. I was ready to hug all the strangers on Osceola, invoke their promise to safeguard this place, and take the lessons garnered here back home to share. We could organize. Mom! The sound of Casey's voice startled me. Deep in my mountain reverie, I'd forgotten she existed. I hiked 43 of the 48 mountains in my 50s after cancer, finishing up in 2008 at the age of 58. Doing the 4,000 footers inspired me to write a book, and though it's not a novel, I do feel that it helped me accomplish my dream of having a published book. I finished my quest a different, and I hope a better person, certainly a more humble and grateful one who better understood how little control she had over life, and who understood she needed to redefine success so that it met my needs and fulfilled me. And also one who took every opportunity to put herself in the embrace of nature. Now, I'm still getting out and hiking, and in a few weeks I'll turn 68. I'm taking my hiking experience to other parts of the world. For my 61st birthday, Larry and I went to New Zealand. You see him there on the Kepler Track, one of the great walks in New Zealand. We did this in late spring, and we were totally shocked, as was everyone else around us, to be faced with the danger of avalanches. Back in the US, Ginny and I signed up for a Sierra Club trip in the northern Cascades of Washington. The trip was called Wildflowers and Wanderlust, and it was gorgeous. Here you see Hikes Pass, up around 10,000 feet. In the summer of 2017, Larry and I enjoyed a trip to Poland, and here we are hiking the highest of the Carpathian mountain range, the High Tatras. I leave you and end my story with 3 wishes. May you continue to do your utmost to preserve and protect our planet and its health, our only home, before it's too late. May you continue spending time outdoors, maybe even more than you already do, whether that's noticing nature in the form of trees on the sidewalk or some little weed that's grown up through cracks in the pavement. I mean, what a lesson in endurance and perseverance that is. Or better yet, if you can get out into the wild. I mean, we were made to connect with nature. And I hope you've come to understand some of the benefits I derived by spending as much time as I did and do out in nature. And lastly, may you succeed on your own quests, whatever kind of mountains those involve. I believe what Eleanor Roosevelt said: the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. So keep dreaming. Thanks for listening.